Dun, 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 dun. Hello again, Dennis Brown for Firefly guitar fans, and as you can tell, we've spared no expense at bringing you fancy titles to these videos. I'm actually new to videos. I've done recording in recording studios and stuff for years and years and years, but you know, this whole video thing is new for me. This is the second video on the Firefly LP series guitars that are due out somewhere near the end of 2019. They sent me a prototype, which is very, very close to what's actually going to get released. And in the first video, I kind of covered all the technical stuff and how it's constructed and all of that. And I'm not going to rehash all of that. In a nutshell, I like it a lot. And there's very little that I don't like. And the things that I don't like are pretty nitpicky petty and all of that. So for a $300 to $400 guitar, it's a great value, except these cost less than $200. So they're exceptional values. I get a lot of requests from people in the Firefly Guitar Fans group for sound demos, and it's almost always for clean demos. In the first video, I used a Fender Supersonic 22, which is a great all-around amp, a little esoteric. Not many people actually have those. It sounds a lot like a deluxe reverb, which is a little pricier of an amp, and it has the same power stage and all. But I want to do a video that's clean tones that uses several amps, so you can actually hear it through different price range amps, because it doesn't sound the same as your amp if I'm using $1,500 worth of guitar rig and you've got a $300 amp. So what we're going to do is do this in a couple of quick stages, and I'll just have to actually do some video editing for a change. We're going to start out with an Acoustic G-35 and a completely stock, decent little amp. And we're going to also switch back and forth here in this first half of the video with a Fender Blues Jr, which is a really common amp for you guys that want small, you know, but still tube amps. It's a little bit modified. I've thrown in some JJ tubes. I've thrown in an Eminence Cannabis Rex speaker, which I really, really love. It kind of trims off some of the brittle highs. But still, you know, it's just a modified Junior, and it'll give you a pretty good idea of what it's going to sound like if you have a Junior. And then I'll switch to a couple of other amps. I'll have to stop the video and come back in. But let's get to it, and let's just hear what she sounds like. First with the acoustic, and as always, just look here. I don't need to tell you which pickup I'm on. You can figure it out. Switch over. And before I switch over, let me say too, almost all of my videos that I do, especially the clean ones, I am not running effects. I mean, I'm running a little bit of reverb and that's it. I see a lot of clean guitar demos and they're so layered with chorus or flanger or everything. You can't really hear the guitar. Any guitar, even a piece of junk, if you add enough effects, you can make them all sound good. I like to run pretty much guitar straight through amp. You're hearing the real thing, what it really sounds like. You know, if you add chorus and all of that, it's going to sound better for certain things. Yeah. So you're going to hear the real thing when you hear a video that's for me, straight to amp. So here's the Fender. something radically different. I like to do a lot of finger picking without picking, and I know a lot of y'all do too. So it's nice to hear it that way. It's going to be a little lower volume, but you know this. Now it's here with the Fender. Okay, switching back to the acoustic, and let's just do some kind of basic rock type of. using, that's the Junior you can see there, and to the, that's the Acoustic. Those are small amps that are common for guys playing at home and just kind of jamming with friends and stuff like that. And the Acoustic is really, you know, it was 100 to 120 bucks. I think I paid 100 for mine. It's very typical of a solid state practice amp. It's 35 watts, and it sounds like a lot of others. It's a pretty good sounding amp. I like the tubes better. I mean, but you know, I'm kind of that way. So if you'll hang on, and you don't have to hang on long thanks to the magic of video editing, we're going to listen to a couple of slightly bigger amps, more common amps that guys that are doing club gigs and you know, bar gigs and stuff like that are using, or even in church gigs that are using in about that long. And we're back thanks to the magic of video editing. It was instantaneous for you. I had to set up the volume levels on a couple of amps. But what we're going to use now are probably the most popular club amps. And I've got them because I love them. They're great amps. One is a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, 40 watt tube. They've been around forever and ever and ever. I did hundreds of gigs with one. That was, you know, from really the late 90s on to until I quit gigging. That was my main amp that I used. This is a Gen 3. I used an older Gen 1, but they're very, very similar. The second amp we're going to use is the Marshall. Yeah, you've seen that if you've seen my other videos. It's a DSL40CR, which is the R is the revision, or the new model. Both 40 watts. They're both in the $750 to $800 price range. They're you know, they're both mid-sized amps. They're both solid tube. They're both dual channel, although they're radically different amps. And I'm having to run these at volume levels that are really, really low. The Marshall I can switch over to 20 watts. I can't do that with the Fender. So the Marshall has an unfair advantage. The Fender does not like to be low. You know, the Hot Rod Deluxes, they like to be loud. So you're not going to get the full tone of these amps, but you're going to get the pretty good, you know, pretty close flavor of them. And you know, I can't crank them up at 50% volume and without blowing out the mic. And just for those of you that are curious what I'm using for a mic, it's not the camera's mic. I'm using an NMXL V250. And I've got a 990 around here somewhere. I may use on some others. The good, good affordable studio mics, and the mic is actually here, so we're getting a room amp. I'm not putting SM57s in front of the amps, which would be the right way to do it, you know, but I don't have a half dozen SM57s laying around, so we're going to do it this way. Anyway, we'll start with a Marshall, and as always, you know what goes on. Now we're going to switch over to the Hot Rod Deluxe Fender. Going back to the Marshall, and I'm playing the same sound bites. They're not remarkable. I'm not here to try to wow you with my guitar playing. I'm here so you can switch back and forth, and it'll make it easier for you to actually compare the different sounds with the different amps. So let's get over back onto the Marshall finger picking style. Now we're going to switch back to the Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. You're probably already noticing that these amps really radically sound different. I mean, you would think the Fender would be brighter and the Marshall would be thicker and all of that, but and keep in mind we're hearing it through a mic here, we're hearing them at low volume, and the main thing is to let you hear it through a variety of circumstances. It's not that this is exactly the perfect picture of what your Marshall CR, you know, is going to sound like, and although the more I listen to it, the more I like that Marshall clean. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Now let's switch over to the Fender. By the way, if you heard a little bit of crackling through that Fender, it's not the guitar. I told you Fenders do not like to be set down low. They just, you know, they don't want to fight, and but it is what it is. You know, those are made for club gigging and stuff like that. So there, you've heard it. You've heard it through 4 different amps, plus with the other video, you've heard it through 5 different amps, 3 Fenders, a Marshall, and a solid state acoustic amp. I think now that should give you a pretty good idea of what it sounds like clean. It's easy to make a guitar sound good dirty, you know, with the right pedals and the right stuff. And I'll probably do a video with some different types of gain in the same way, which is to create dirty tones that use a bunch of different varieties, so you can kind of hear what it'll do. But the clean is what really, that's where the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is the clean sound. That's the actual signal you're dealing with. My personal opinion is that it's pretty impressive. It's got they're not muddy. It's got nice tones. It's bright without being too bright, so you're not missing out on anything. And I think no matter what you run it through all the amps, it sounds good to me. And I have no desire to replace the pickups. I mean, this is, you know, my guitar now, and I don't, you know, I have pickups on the shelf. I've got some Dragonfire Screamers, you know, and I've got a Pearly Gates back there, bridge pickup, and I like them the way it is. I got a feeling that most of you are going to like this the way that it is, especially if you play mainly clean. So thanks again, and check out Firefly Guitar Fans on Facebook. Join the group if you haven't. If you want the first news on what's going on with Firefly guitars, like I said, you know, that is the place to go. That's the, you know, they're always going to get the news first when the guitars are going to come out, and they sell out so fast. It's good to know exactly when they're coming out, and that's the only place you're really going to find out that information. So until next time, thanks again.